Unfortunately, they have a constitutional right to parent their kids. And you can't do shit about it. You just can't. When you're in litigation, let's be real clear. It is a poker game. And do you ever show all your cards in a poker game? No. It's the same thing in family law litigation. You don't point out every mistake. Why, as a parent, would you ever want your child to have the sexual abuse victim label the rest of their lives if they're not?
Abuse doesn't stop when you leave a relationship. Then starts the post-separation abuse. To address the common issues with divorce and custody battle, I'm being joined today by Michele Locke. She's also a judge and a family law attorney. I'm so excited to have you here. This is a discussion I've been waiting to have a long time. But before we hop into the guts of it, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into this arena?
You know, I got into this arena during my parents' divorce when I was in second grade in Miss Henry's class. Because I remember my father, who was a surgeon, telling me that if I ever became a lawyer, he would disown me. And that for me was like, done. And you think I'm kidding. I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was 8 years old. I wanted to be a judge since I was about 9. And I never really deviated from that. And family law for me, my entire life has kind of been designed around family law, whether by choice or by circumstance. From my parents getting divorced to both my parents remarrying, my dad remarrying a couple times, to I married, well, my now ex-husband, but my husband at the time, we were married for 22 years, 23 years. Anyways, he had 2 girls. They were 3 and 5 when we got together, so I've been a step parent. My stepdad adopted me as an adult. I was a former family law judge, and so when I've lived all sides of the spectrum of divorce, I really have. So I am fortunate to have, I think, a pretty unique perspective when it comes to looking at family law cases and analyzing, kind of how they play out in a courtroom, et cetera. I mean, because I am a litigator. Texas is the only state left that does jury trials in child custody cases and divorces.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the only state left. And jury trials are a different beast. And so you have to be a different type of attorney to try to do jury trials. It's just not the same as just going to a bench trial in front of a court or in front of a judge.
That's fascinating. What do you think most people get wrong about custody in general?
There's lots of things they get wrong, but I think the biggest thing that people get wrong is their focus is misplaced, because you are never going to get the I'm sorry from the opposing side, or in rare occasions you do. But I deal with mostly high conflict cases, and so you're not going to get the closure you want. You're not going to get the I'm sorry, and you're never in court going to get the you're right, he's wrong, or he's right and you're wrong. It's never that black and white. The court's going to find fault with everyone. And so what you have to decide is what is more important, is figuring out what's best for your kids or engaging with in the battle with your soon-to-be ex. And I think that's the biggest mistake, because the last thing you should want ever, unless you have absolutely no choice, and there are times where you have no choice, but the last thing you want is a stranger making decisions for your family.
Oh, yeah, exactly right. And I think the other thing that I've noticed that's so painful about custody cases and even divorce is that here you've been in this bad relationship. You've had to wake up, find the internal strength to exit that relationship, maybe possibly face threats and a lot of fears. You're now out, and now you're facing them off, trying to defend why you should walk away as much of the pie as you can, and you should. So help me understand what you see happen in that process that really goes wrong.
You have to be smart about the battles you pick. That's probably the most important advice, because what I see, especially in communications, is you want to show that he's wrong or she's wrong, whatever side you're on, that they are wrong in their communications each and every time they say a lie, each and every time they say something that's incorrect, invalid, not true, not accurate, or blown out of proportion. You want to defend yourself every time. And that is a waste of energy, and it doesn't really get you anywhere unless it's something like you assaulted our child. And that requires a response. But if it's, hey, he's got these bruises, where'd they come from? if you've got, like, for example, you got boys, my 10-year-old comes home with a different bruise every day.
Yeah.
It's not because he's being abused. It's because he's a boy on the playground.
Right. Right.
So there's a lot of noise that you have to learn how to filter through. And I think that's probably the biggest learning curve. And divorce communication is an art form. It is not your regular communication that you did when you were married. It's not the regular text communication where you can just put anything in. There's an art form to correctly communicating with an ex. And when you get with a narcissist, there's even more rules on how you communicate with that individual.
Yeah. Oh, you're exactly right. And that as it is, it's a big learning curve, like what to say, what not to say, what to bite on, what to leave alone. And it takes so much strength to do that.
And restraint.
Yeah.
It takes an immense amount of restraint.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever advise people in that process to get outside help and support in the middle? I mean, like
I do.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. So it's either I help them learn how to do it. They get a parent coach that helps them learn how to do it. The general rule of thumb I tell them all is do not respond when you're angry. Type out whatever it is you want when you're angry. Do not send it. Save it for the next day for when you're calmer, and then go back and edit it. The other thing I will tell them is use the BIF method, which is brief, informative, firm, and friendly.
Yeah.
You're not engaging in an argument over email. And then there's one other one that I always tell them, and now I'm forgetting what it is. I'll have to come back to it. But there's another port of communication that I'm just like, you just don't. I went blank. Oh, well, it'll circle back around the airport.
Yeah.
And
Do you see what's a common mistake that you think, don't do this? I know it's highly tempting to do it, but really resist doing it. Is something that you see all the time people doing that is really gravely wrong?
Oh, God, don't engage and don't insult. And don't say, well, if you weren't busy sleeping with your, child bride, blah, blah. Just don't. Don't put in there, well, Sam and Johnny said they don't want to go to your house. Please don't put that in writing. Please don't. You do not want to put your children's statements that pit them against the other parent in written communication. You do not.
Because say why? Say what? Because it may not be
Why?
obvious.
Well, there's lots of reasons why. One, they'll say you're an alienator, right? That's number one they're going to say. Number two, if they don't do number one, number two, they're going to take it out on your children the next time they come over.
Right.
And so you just don't. Like, if you are saying, well, Johnny said this, don't say it. Don't do it. Don't do it. The other thing I will tell clients, this is what it came back to, is if you are sitting there writing in communication and you know that your divorce attorney is not going to be happy with that communication, don't send it. Because I guarantee most people know, ooh, she's not or he's not going to like this. Don't send it. Just don't. It'll save you a lot of time, money, and heartache down the road. The other thing I tell people is everything in writing is Exhibit A. So unless you want it in front of a court, don't do it. And that applies for text. That applies for voicemail messages. That applies for social media posts. That applies for anything you put in writing. If you don't want it as an exhibit or you'd be embarrassed about it being an exhibit, don't do it.
Yeah, that's tough one. I see that a lot of people make that mistake. Or for example, they'll think that social media is different cat. That's just my space, but it is not a space.
Another one
I
messages.
see is, what about those that just send you like reams of pages, like 40 pages of, because they walk out and say, how do I document that this actually happened? Because they don't really have the legal language and the wording, but they know something is wrong and they want that point across. So then what they do is they send, because I tell people, create a legal document, but part of it is because you can see the patterns.
Yeah, but you don't have to send it to them.
Right, that's true. Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, and I don't say that, but
yeah, I mean, what you can do and is quite often is do like a letter to your attorney. Dear so-and-so attorney. That way it's protected by attorney work product.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I would do. And so that way, so you're writing it for the purposes of litigation. That way it's not discoverable. And then it becomes a tool that your attorney can use when they're cross-examining your ex. But you don't have to confront them on every bad act, because when you're in litigation, let's be real clear, it is a poker game. And do you ever show all your cards in a poker game? No, It's the same thing in family law litigation. You don't point out every mistake. You don't send a, aha, I got you email, even though you're dying to send it. Because one, you show them your hand. And two, for a narcissist in particular, you give them the ability to come up with the answer and reframe the story. So why would you give them the ammunition to use it? And that is, on cases with narcissistic abuse, that is probably one of the biggest mistakes, is you want to prove that they are wrong. You want to get the evidence by saying them like, you did this on this date, and you send it all out nice and neat, and you think, I got them. No, you just gave them your game plan.
They're so good at that. And I think that's what frustrates the people that I see in the level that I work with, is that they feel like they're fighting against another narrative that's been created that's absolutely they know is totally not what they experienced, and yet they don't know how to present their side of it. So what do you see go wrong in those situations, and what would you recommend people do differently?
So it depends on a couple of things. One, you need to reframe your focus so it's about the children. Because at the end of the day, the courts don't necessarily care about you personally. They don't necessarily care about your ex-spouse personally. But the court absolutely cares what happens to those kids. And they want to ensure that those kids are in the most stable environment that they can be in, given the circumstances of each particular case. That being said, if you've got a parent that doesn't get over it, then you are much more likely to lose in court, because the court is going to view you as so fixated on the wrongs not being righted that you're not focusing on the well-being of the children. And you're going to carry over that resentment to the children, which results in alienation. It's like a domino effect.
I've seen that right now, that the courts are labeling somebody that I know as argumentative, when simply she's just trying to have her viewpoint validated.
Correct. And there's some again, it goes back to strategizing and picking the correct battle. And the correct battle is always the focus on the kids. Now, instead of focusing, I understand, like in Texas, if you get family violence findings, like there are some things that change custody by statute if you've got a family violence finding. Lots of times, narcissists are not physically abusive.
Right.
So even though they may have tormented you for years and gaslit you for years and breadcrumbed you for years, which has driven you to the point of literally losing your mind, because usually the last fight is the person is the victim. It just basically snaps and is like, I can't, and they do things they wouldn't normally do, but they've been pushed to that point where they have no choice, and usually the narcissist is recording.
Right. Exactly.
So instead of coming up for excuses, because I guarantee you that person's going to go play that exhibit or that recording in court. I've seen it done a million times. I've probably played that recording as well in my cases, is own your behavior. Own it. So yeah, that is unfortunate that I did that on that day, but you get a lot more credibility with the court when you own it, as opposed to saying, he caused me to do that. Because no matter the abuse, you still did it. No matter what the narcissist did to you, you still lost control on that particular day. Is it fair? No, but there are lots of 4-letter words in divorce, and I can assure you fair is not one of them. And so you just have to be smart and strategic about how you handle those types of cases. And you just have to make sure you pick your battles. So when you're engaging with a narcissist and they've painted this picture about you, you can agree to disagree. But you want to turn their behavior into a negative on the children, not a negative on you.
Yeah, that's a really powerful point. Really powerful point. And so how do you know that you're dealing with a narcissistically abusive situation without having anyone told you? Is there some clear signs that you see when a client walks into the office and sits down with you?
So I don't know about visual signs, although there can be. I mean, I've had people, and it's male and female, let's be real clear, that have walked in and you can just see that they've been beaten down. And I don't mean beaten down physically. Like they are a shell of their former selves. Like there are some that you can very much see that. And then there are some that you just have to really go through the facts of the case, because then you start noticing the abusive cycles, like the financial control, like they have one car and someone drives and drops off all the day. Like you start paying attention to the red flags, so to speak. And I think a lot of people overuse those terms, but really you start paying attention to the smaller details, because when the smaller details start adding up, and then you're like, we got some problems.
Does that change the way that the litigation or that the case plays out?
It can. One, it's, people often expect for somehow when they get divorced that the person they were married to for ever many years is going to change personalities and somehow become different in the litigation. No.
I know. It's like they're going to get reasonable now. Why?
Yeah, no, they weren't reasonable in the marriage. They're not going to be reasonable in divorce. In fact, they get worse.
Right.
I always tell people as well, I'm like, they're no longer your friend. They're no longer your buddy. I said, they are now looking out for themselves. I said, and you need to do the same. But so strategy changes once you realize what you are dealing with. When I look at any family law case, I very much look at kind of the nuts and bolts, like how did we get from A to Z? And so you kind of figure out where the problems really started, because they didn't start right before they came to see you, right? Like a marriage has been going on for 23 years. Those cracks and that resentment, like the ultimate resentment that no one could get over, started years and years and years ago. And so you just kind of have to get to the source, because once you get to really where the source is, it kind of helps you fashion how the litigation should go. I mean, provided you can control as much as you can control within the litigation structure. Once you get in front of a different judge, it's different. But
Right. One of the things that drives most people nuts, though, is they think, if this person's so bad for me to be around, why in the world should I want them to be around my children? How can I safely allow them unsupervised time with somebody who is that toxic? And yet we don't have. Yeah. So what do you say to that?
So here's what I say. Unfortunately, they have a constitutional right to parent their kids, and you can't do anything about it. I mean, can't do shit about it. You just can't. Like, they have a constitutional right now, and everyone has a right to raise their children in whatever way they want to. And so what happens in divorce, and a lot of times the biggest problem comes from a parent that can't let go of control. Yeah. And that is where a big problem comes from, especially and it really happens more with moms, because moms are the primary caregiver oftentimes on children. They're the ones that run the schedules, the activities, the doctor's appointments. And then when you get divorced, you all of a sudden have someone that's now jumping in where they were never in before. And that creates problems. And so, especially on the cases involving narcissists, because those are the ones that most often end in court. If you're ending up in court on family law, but especially a final trial, there's usually someone involved in the case, one of the parties that has a personality disorder. That's just a general rule, because most reasonable people who care about their kids will work things out. But if you are ending up in final trial, someone's got a personality disorder. It's a general rule. There are exceptions to every rule, but as I find, there's usually one party or both, it just depends, has some kind of issue.
Do you think parental alienation is real? Or is it often a strategy that one person's using against the other partner as a way to claim the breach in the relationship with the kids?
So I think it's both, actually. I have done 2 jury trials on parental alienation cases. And both of the times, my clients were the ones that were being alienated. And my issue with the label is not so much the label. It's kind of what's happened with our politics. Everything is so extreme that with what I've seen, it's either parental alienation exists in about every case and it's awful, or there's the side that says it doesn't even exist and it's only used by abusers. I don't think the extremes are accurate. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I think there are different levels of alienating a child from one parent. And you may not call it alienation, but if you are consistently around your child and they overhear you saying how bad the other parent is, I don't care what you call it, you're not supposed to do it. That is having your kid internalize that other parent is bad. It just is. And so I think oftentimes it's not intentionally done. I think you will see some people where it is not intentional. The cases that I've gone to jury trial on, I don't have any doubt in my mind that it was 100% intentional and done with the direct desired result, which was to destroy dad's relationship with the children and to ensure that dad never had contact with the children in both of those cases.
What did those people do? And it sounds like in your situation, you see a lot of women do this more than men. I've seen both sides do it, but
listen, both sides do it.
Yeah,
I'll be
yeah.
real clear on that. Both
Yeah,
sides
yeah.
alienate.
yeah. So what are some clear strategies that people maybe don't always know, but is actually going to do this?
You know, and this is what the people who say alienation doesn't exist, this is what they say. They say that only people that are abusing, like sexual abusers, are using parental alienation to hide their sexual abuse. Okay. The cases that I had were allegations of sexual abuse by dad against the kids and both female children. And I know, and I told those clients when I first started to represent them, because I go through whether I'm not going to represent someone that's raping a child, right? I'm just not. Or sexually assaulting a child. That's kind of where I draw the line. And so I know when I met with those particular individuals, it was very much, I had to assess whether I believed their story or not.
Right, right.
And I also made it clear that if at any point in time I learned that in fact the allegations were true, I wouldn't continue to represent them. While no one can ever know for sure, because this is muddy waters, and this is a very divisive comment that I'm about to make. Mm-hmm. While the only people that know what happened were the two people that were there, I really don't have any doubt in my mind that neither one of those fathers ever were sexually inappropriate in any way, shape, or form with those children. I do not. I mean, I will go to my grave. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. And in at least one of the cases, I firmly believe that the ultimate issue was that my client never married mom. And that was where her resentment came from. And it was such a deep resentment that she was going to make it absolutely so that he could never see his child again, who he loved very dearly and who he's done everything for. And that one was one where, when I say she went to every length to lie, manipulate, and abuse this child, like, I think she should have been criminally charged for what she did to this little girl.
Well, that's so heartbreaking.
So what happens is sexual abuse, I think, gets overplayed. I'm not going to say that sexual abuse doesn't happen, but typically sexual abusers do it undercover, right? They don't continue to sexually abuse a person when they're under the watchful eye of a court. As a general rule, that's not what those perpetrators do.
Yeah.
And so if you've got someone that's going into court and standing up for themselves and saying, I didn't do this, I didn't do it, and undergoing the questioning and the invasion into your life that happens when that kind of allegation is made, and if someone's willing to do that for their kid, tend to believe them.
Yeah, yeah. I saw something similar years ago. It was my supervisor back when I was an intern. This is an amazing psychologist. You know, he supervised many, many people late in his career, divorced his wife, and pops up all of a sudden that he's been sexually abusing the daughter. Like, he's a child psychologist.
Right.
Now, can child psychologists do it? Oh, absolutely.
Yes, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
But this
Any
person,
predator
I
can.
knew him. I knew his integrity. And I thought, no, this is a red herring. But I know it devastated him. And then also it was devastating his career because...
Well, and it devastates the kid, because why, as a parent, would you ever want your child to have the sexual abuse victim label the rest of their lives if they're not? Yeah. I mean, it's hard enough if you are. Why would you give them a label when it's not? Like, that's where the whole you're not putting the kid first thing comes from, that your anger and your hatred for this person that somehow wronged you is ultimately causing severe harm to your child. So there are cases of sexual abuse, and the courts do err on the side of caution on those cases. And when there's allegations made, cut out contact and do the right things under the circumstances at the time. So that's the problem, is that the people on the extreme of parental alienation will generally say that it's used by abusers to protect themselves. That may be true, but I don't also think that's not necessarily accurate in every case.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I just don't like these labels of all or nothing. I think it really is somewhere in between. And and the cases like this where those allegations are made are the cases where thoughtful investigation needs to be done, a thoughtful and careful analysis of all the evidence needs to be done, and no one needs to jump to conclusions. But it's not all or nothing. And so I really disagree with all the pundits on both sides
Yeah.
to say it's all or nothing.
I appreciate that a lot. So this is my last question before we jump over and talk about something else on the podcast extra. But I wondered what it was like for you to represent a narcissist, because I'm sure you have.
Oh, I have.
I'm dying of curiosity what they're like as a client.
They are at sometimes your best friend. And at other times you want to beat your head against a wall because they won't listen, because they know better than you.
Yeah, they probably know better than you, don't they?
And they do. They think that everyone loves them. Every man or woman wants them. Like, they are irresistible, and they know it all. And I hate to break it to them, they're not. But some of them are. Being a narcissist doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad parent. I hate to say that, but it's the same thing as you can be bipolar and be a great parent, right? Like, you shouldn't lose your kids necessarily because you have a personality disorder. Lots of people have narcissistic traits. I can guarantee every litigator I know has narcissistic traits. We couldn't be good at what we do without it. Doesn't mean we're a narcissist. But yeah, they are, for me, in some ways, they're some of my funnest clients because I know what I'm getting. Like, there's no secret to who they are. Like, you know. Yeah.
Have you ever felt like you're being super exploited by one?
Yeah. I had one in particular, and that was a valuable learning lesson that I've not repeated that mistake since.
Yeah, I bet. Well, this has been a fascinating discussion, Michele. Thank you so much for it. I want to jump over to the podcast extra and talk about when you recognize the attorney that you've hired isn't working in your best interest and what to do about that, because I know that happens way too often, that victims tend to accidentally pick another toxic individual as their attorney and then get abused again in that professional relationship. So we're going to hop over and talk about that. But
that's interesting.
How can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
They can find me a couple places. I'm on Instagram at attorney Michele Locke. I also have my website, which is michelelocke.com. I'm a frequent co-host on Love Lust Fridays. It drops about every Friday with Jake Deptula, who's done Strictly Stalking and Love Lust Fear. And then I'll be launching my own podcast in the next 2 months called Love Lust Law. So I stay pretty busy, but ironic that you would mention that particular topic because I actually did a blog on, when your worst decision in your divorce case is who you hired. Like, the last thing you want to be at the end of your divorce case is looking at your attorney going, man, that was my mistake.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I deeply appreciate this.
Well, thanks for having me. Really, this is a ton of fun.
Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode. Are you following me on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube? You can find me at Carrie McAvoy, PhD. Or you can learn more about me and my resources, such as the Toxic Free Relationship Club, at carriemcavoyphd.com. And I'll see you back here next week.